Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Ancient Wonders. Today we'll discuss about very interesting topic: Manchester, 2,000 years from Roman fort to modern metropolis. Part 1. Picture the city you know today. Packed stadiums roaring on Derby Day, guitar riffs echoing out of factory record studios, a university lecture hall where scientists once split the atom for the very first time. Manchester feels permanent, like it has always been exactly this important. But rewind the clock almost 2,000 years and none of that exists yet. There is no stadium, no record label, no laboratory. There is only a muddy riverbank, a handful of soldiers, and an empire deciding this patch of land is worth defending. Today we are going all the way back to the beginning, tracing every transformation that turned a forgotten frontier outpost into one of the most influential cities on Earth. We will watch a wooden fort rise out of wilderness, a quiet market town slowly take shape, and then witness something genuinely unprecedented: the birth of the industrial age itself, right here on these riverbanks. Using modern image technology, we can bring old engravings and faded photographs back to life, letting you see this story unfold almost as if you were standing there. Let's step into the year 79 and meet the soldiers who started it all. Rome is pushing its border further north than most of its own generals feel comfortable with. Governor Gnaeus Julius Agricola needs a chain of forts linking his strongholds at Chester and York, and he needs one positioned exactly where two rivers meet, the Medlock and the Irwell. His engineers pick a sandstone ridge overlooking that confluence, high enough to defend, close enough to water for a garrison to survive. The local Brigantes tribe already has a name for this ridge, something that roughly translates to breast-shaped hill. And Latin transforms that into Mamucium. What rises here is not glamorous. This is the edge of the known world as far as Rome is concerned: cold, wet, and a long way from anywhere resembling the Mediterranean sun. Most of these soldiers grew up under. Many of them come from modern-day Spain, from Germany, from North Africa, thrown together to build earthen ramparts and timber palisades around a fort meant to hold roughly 500 men. Eventually they upgrade to stone. Outside the walls, a small civilian settlement grows the way it always does near a Roman garrison. Traders setting up stalls, craftspeople opening workshops, soldiers' families building modest homes. A bathhouse appears, a small and services official travelers passing through. Potter-shaped clay. Grain gets ground into flour. For roughly 3 centuries, this quiet rhythm continues at the edge of empire, until it does not. In the year 410, Rome finally withdraws its legions from Britain entirely, and the elaborate infrastructure holding this frontier together collapses almost overnight. Within a single generation, locals are pulling stones from abandoned buildings to use for their own purposes. The roads crack and go unrepaired. The civilian settlement empties out. Mamucium fades so completely from memory that historians today are left piecing together fragments rather than reading a continuous record. We genuinely know almost nothing about what happens here between the Roman retreat and the Norman conquest centuries later. The name itself drifts and mutates, Mamucium becoming something closer to Mamesister in Old English, eventually settling into the word we recognize today. There is likely a small Anglo-Saxon settlement here, possibly a church, but almost no written record survives to confirm the details. When William the Conqueror orders the Domesday Survey in 1086, Manchester barely earns a mention, folded quietly into the manor of Salford, home to perhaps a few hundred residents at most. Nothing here suggests future greatness. It looks like just another scattering of timber buildings tucked into the northwest corner of a newly conquered kingdom. And yet, slowly, almost invisibly, something begins to shift. In 1222, the lord of the manor secures permission to hold a regular market, and that single decision changes everything that follows. A market draws trade, and trade draws money, and money draws people willing to build something permanent. The settlement expands outward from the market cross at its center. A parish church rises on the site of an earlier Saxon chapel, eventually becoming Manchester Cathedral, rebuilt in the 14th century in soaring perpendicular Gothic style. Even so, this remains a genuinely small place by any measure. Around the year 1400, perhaps 1,500 people call it home. Surrounded by marshland that floods with frustrating regularity, the whole town still fundamentally agricultural, muddy, and entirely unremarkable to outside observers. What Manchester does have, though, is wool. The surrounding Lancashire countryside produces it in abundance, and the town becomes a modest center for trading raw wool and weaving. Finished cloth, small-scale work carried out inside ordinary homes and cramped workshops, but work nonetheless, and work that slowly accumulates into something resembling prosperity. Then history intervenes again. Henry VIII dissolves England's monasteries throughout the 1530s, appending religious life across the country. Yet Manchester, never especially dependent on monastic institutions, weathers the disruption relatively unscathed. Its collegiate church, established back in 1421 and run by a college of priests rather than monks, survives intact. A century later, when civil war tears England apart, Manchester throws its support behind Parliament rather than the king, and in 1642 royalist forces attack the town outright. Its defenders, mostly ordinary townspeople, armed with whatever weapons they can improvise, somehow manage to hold the line, earning Manchester a lasting reputation as a stubborn parliamentarian stronghold. By 1650, the population has climbed to roughly 5,000, a proper town now, with a grammar school founded back in 1515, growing wealth from textiles, and a reputation as a legitimate commercial center. Within the region. Still, nothing about it yet suggests the seismic transformation waiting just around the corner. That transformation begins in earnest during the 1700s, and it starts, of all places, with fashion. Cotton fabric imported from India becomes wildly popular across England in the late 17th century, prized for being lighter than wool, easier to wash. Part 2. And capable of holding brilliant dye colors that will simply cannot match. There is only one obstacle standing between England and an endless supply of this fabric. The country cannot grow cotton itself. Every fiber has to be shipped in raw and then spun and woven domestically. This single limitation quietly ties Manchester's entire future to one of history's darkest chapters. The raw cotton flooding into English ports comes overwhelmingly from plantations across the American South and the Caribbean, worked by enslaved Africans under conditions of almost unimaginable cruelty. British ships depart loaded with manufactured goods bound for the coast of Africa, trade those goods for human beings, transport those people across the Atlantic under horrific conditions, and then return home carrying raw cotton, sugar, and tobacco. This is the infamous triangular trade, and Manchester sits directly at its receiving end. Lancashire's damp climate turns out to be nearly perfect for spinning cotton fiber without it snapping, and the region gradually becomes the beating heart of an entire industry built on that imported material. At first, all of this happens inside people's own homes, a genuinely cottage industry with spinners working spinning wheels by their own hearths and weavers operating hand looms in cramped cottage rooms, merchants circulating through to collect finished cloth and sell it. Onward, sometimes right back to the very plantation owners whose enslaved workforce had grown the raw fiber in the first place. Then, within the span of roughly 15 years, everything about this process gets rewritten by a handful of inventions. James Hargreaves unveils the spinning jenny in 1764, a single machine capable of spinning several threads simultaneously. Richard Arkwright patents his water-powered spinning frame in 1769. Samuel Crompton fuses both ideas together into the spinning mule a decade later. Suddenly, one worker operating one of these machines can outproduce dozens of people working by hand. But these machines are far too large and far too expensive to fit inside an ordinary cottage. They need serious power, water wheels at first, and steam engines soon after, and they need purpose-built structures large enough to house them. This is the moment the factory itself gets invented. The first cotton mills rise across Manchester and its surrounding towns throughout the 1780s and 1790s, multi-story brick buildings crammed with machinery, driven by steam, employing hundreds of workers under a single roof. By the year 1800, Manchester has completed an astonishing transformation, evolving from a modest market town into something the world has genuinely never encountered before, a true industrial city, and it is only just getting started. The 19th century opens with Manchester's population already surging past 70,000, its skyline dominated by mill chimneys, its air thick with coal smoke pouring from steam engines running around the clock. This is the future arriving early, and it is being manufactured right here. Yet the human toll behind all this progress is staggering. Workers are packed into back-to-back terrace housing built around narrow, airless courtyards. Entire families crowded into single rooms with no sanitation and no access to clean water. Disease spreading through these conditions with brutal efficiency. Mills run shifts stretching 12, 14, even 16 hours a day, and children as young as 5 or 6 are sent in to work them. Their small hands considered ideal for crawling beneath dangerous machinery to clear away loose cotton fibers. Accidents happen constantly. Lungs fill slowly with cotton dust. By the 1840s, average life expectancy inside Manchester has collapsed to somewhere around 25 years, and still people keep arriving, because the alternative, rural poverty with no wages at all, is even worse. Irish immigrants pour into the city in enormous numbers, especially following the devastating potato famine of the 1840s, and Manchester sprawls outward in every direction, chaotic and almost entirely unplanned. The wealth being generated throughout all of this is genuinely extraordinary. By the 1830s,